show for you guys lined up, all highlighting Chattanooga. And as we've said before, and as Craig usually says, the greatest freight city in the United States. I'm joined today by the one and only Malcolm Harris.
Hello.
Speaking of Chattanooga and how amazing our town is, I got home last night, checked my mailbox, and this was it.
Okay.
And I was so excited, so I had to bring it up. It's just one more example of how great Chattanooga is. You guys, this is Chattanooga Lifestyle Magazine. The 5 gentlemen in Chattanooga you should know, featuring our own Malcolm Harris with his own full-page spread.
You're great.
It was so fun. I was so excited to see it. Malcolm, tell us a little bit about this, how it came about, and was it a fun process?
Oh my gosh, well, it was awesome. Thank you to Lisa Yaki Rice for being able to have me on the lifestyle issue, the gentleman's issue for Chattanooga City Lifestyle, of course. It was great just being able just to tell my story and, you know, coming back home to Chattanooga. And we're going to get into all things about Chattanooga today and how great of a city it is. But no, I wouldn't be here without the opportunity here at FreightWaves, and just excited to be here. It's a really good time.
What I loved about it, well, I mean, obviously was that it was you, but then
Oh,
also that you talked about the opportunity at your show, What the Truck.
Yeah, of course.
Malcolm is obviously the host of What the Truck, provides to tell other people's stories in our
100%.
industry, to really talk about them as individuals and how they're impacting the industry, and then their stories to how they got there. And I just thought that was so cool.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's a pleasure. I mean, we are going to tell a lot of stories today. We got some great guests on the way, but just to, again, what we say before I was on air, this the Mocha Craig Fuller is here today. So, all right, so I'm excited for what's to come, and hope I do us justice here on my debut here on FreightWaves today.
No, it's going to be great. So yes, we do. We have a great lineup of guests all in the studio. Today we have Ed Esposito, the COO of Logistics, as well as Mike Kolff, the director of a very long title, Distribution, Transportation, and Inventory from Opella. So it's going to be a great show. Really excited to have them both joining us live in studio to talk about a few topics, that we haven't necessarily gotten to yet on the show this week. Excited to get a shipper's viewpoint on things, as well as talk about warehousing a little bit.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great conversation. We got not a shortage of content to go through. It's going to be fun.
It is. It's going to be great. We
kick things off with a grim warning from Wall Street about one of the industry's more specialized logistics players. S&P Global Ratings has slashed Odyssey Logistics' debt rating to CC+ from BRs, bringing it in line with a similar cut by Moody's late last year. But more starkly, S&P's analysis goes so far as to raise the possibility of an Odyssey default in 2027. The third-party logistics provider faces a $125 million revolving credit facility maturing in July 2027 and a massive $490 million term loan due that October. According to S&P, multiple years of soft freight demand, depressed trucking rates, and rising costs have contributed to reported operating losses over the past 2 years, with free cash flow hitting negative $27 million last year. The agency projects Odyssey's revolver utilization will climb to about $42 million by mid-2027, eventually exhausting all available liquidity and making a default increasingly likely. Over in the parcel sector, Amazon has scored a huge legal victory that preserves the structure of its sprawling delivery network. A National Labor Relations Board administrative law judge has approved a settlement between the NLRB General Counsel and Amazon, effectively ending a process that could have declared the e-commerce giant a joint employer with its direct service providers, the independently owned companies that deliver parcels for Amazon. The original complaint, filed in September 2024, centered on Amazon's relationship with battle-tested strategies, a DSP operating out of Amazon's DX8 facility in Palmdale, California, believed to be the only DSP where workers voted for Teamsters representation. Under the settlement deal, which includes a non-admission clause specifically disclaiming Amazon's joint employer status, workers at BTS are entitled to 2 weeks' pay, with the number of eligible individuals estimated at 84. The Teamsters have quickly filed a request to appeal what they call a defective unilateral settlement, warning that without a finding that Amazon is a joint employer, the DSP model will continue to pose an existential threat to workers' rights. Finally, a major bellwether for the less-than-truckload sector is flashing increasingly positive signals about the freight market's recovery. Old Dominion Freight Line reported a 12.3% year-over-year increase in revenue per day during May, significantly outpacing its previously reported 7.6% revenue increase in April. May tonnage was down just 3.8% year-over-year, a notable improvement from April's 6.1% decline, while yield increased approximately 16% during the month. President and CEO Marty Freeman noted that while LTL tons per day declined on a year-over-year basis in both April and May, demand has continued to improve as the quarter has progressed. The improving metrics are being bolstered by a broader industrial recovery, with manufacturing data released Monday showing the Purchasing Managers Index registered a 54 reading for May, the highest for the dataset in 4 years. Old Dominion previously guided to 300 to 350 basis points of sequential operating margin improvement in the second quarter, which would mark the first meaningful year-over-year improvement since 2022.
Another great edition of the Morning Minute. So thankful for our team putting that together. Fantastic stuff, and a lot happening right now in the space, Julie.
Yeah, there is. I think the first story is really interesting to talk about where, look, obviously debt and improving covenants is nothing we want to hear about in our industry, but we've been coming out of a 4-year down cycle, right, where it's nearly impossible to generate margin as a 3PL. We've talked about that repeatedly, looked at the unit economics and where brokerage margins were hanging and struggling at that 10% mark, which it's impossible to make money. Now we're coming out of that down market. But what is struggling is now there's no capacity available, right? So brokers are still getting squeezed, right? Now there's freight available potentially, but it's incredibly hard to cover it in such a tight market with spot rates rising so quickly.
100%. And I think with the spot market, you're going to see over time just how volatile this thing is. I don't think that this is just the end at all. I mean, if anything, we're just getting started with these market conditions as, of course, we're going to have different holidays coming up. I mean, the 4th here in a couple of weeks is going to be here. And, of course, the fallout. I know people have their different, I guess, opinions based off the SCOTUS ruling, but that certainly has something to play into it as well. So
yeah, I don't know that that's actually taking capacity out of the market yet, but I do think, and Craig and I might even disagree on this one.
All right, let's hear it.
I do think that transactional spot pricing is highly emotional.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think this ruling has had an emotional impact and continued to drive prices up, even if it hasn't actually pulled capacity out of the market yet, because brokers know how much harder it's going to continue to make their jobs. And then, so hopefully their prices to shippers, if they're transactional, are going up. Maybe not hopefully if you're a shipper, but in order for them to be able to make margins. And then carriers who are aware of what's going on in the market and are truly compliant carriers are going to emotionally try to raise those rates as well.
Definitely.
So I think that there is an emotional element of that is driving rates up, even if it's not actually pulling capacity out. The other headline that I thought was especially interesting that I'd like to talk a little bit more is the Old Dominion one. I loved those numbers. 12.3% revenue increase in May versus a 7.6% in April. That's a huge jump month over month.
Huge.
And that even though it's not up year over year, tonnage was up month over month too. So that's not just rate going up from capacity exiting, it's also actual volume going up. So we're starting to see that demand pick up as well, which I think is great. I'll be really excited to see end of month, end of quarter as we get to the end of this month and the end of Q2 and see Q2 earnings come out, because I think they're going to look significantly different than most companies' Q1 earnings looked that are in our landscape. But I also think it's just additional evidence of what we have been saying, that manufacturing is so strong right now.
It is very, very strong. And I think that, again, to use Craig Fuller's terminology, we're very bullish on manufacturing and what's currently happening. And I definitely am looking forward to seeing earnings and reporting from our writers here at FreightWaves, and as these things come out at the end of Q2 as well.
Agreed. Yeah. We're going to hear a quick message from one of our sponsors, and then we will get into our first guest.
They happen. Samsara, of course, is the AI-powered safety platform fleet which again identifies risk in real time, giving managers greater visibility into what's happening on the road and providing the coaching insights needed to improve driver performance. In fact, fleets use Samsara completely for AI safety solutions and have reduced crash rates by nearly 75%. To learn more and see the data behind these results, download the latest Samsara safety report at samsara.com/freightwaves.
All right, great. Thank you so much to Ed Esposito for being here. He is the COO of Logistics. So tell us a little bit about your organization, what you guys do, and how you serve your clients.
Well, thanks for having me. And Logistics is a 3PL here in Chattanooga, and we support our clients with warehousing, with freight, and then as well as build out and installation services. And so a key part of our business is actually launching fulfillment centers, launching manufacturing plants, launching warehousing, and installing all the components that are in the facility. And so it's an element of consulting on the front end when needed. Otherwise, there's helping them build out and actually performing the installation of all the equipment inside, making it an operational space.
So who are your clients then?
Our clients are big box retailers, online retailers, as well as supporting clients with our freight arm of the division as well. And so really national brands, coast to coast, and we operate in Canada as well as in Mexico as well.
So with that being said, I would imagine that the speed from warehouse to doorstep continues to decrease. The pressure for it to get faster continues to increase. What are some of the things that you guys do to support your clients in that?
Really, two things that stand out first and foremost is installation of new technologies, whether that be conveyors, whether that be robotics, whether that be just sorting technologies actually in the facility as well. And so, yes, we launch buildings, yes, we decommission buildings, but a large portion of our business is installing those new technologies. And so as the industry continues to evolve and that time is shorter and shorter and those requirements from customers are shorter and shorter, we support our clients in making sure they're up to date and having those capabilities installed quickly, obviously safely, and it keeps us on our toes as well. As technology evolves, so does our skill set in installing and maintaining that equipment.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that technology, what that looks like inside warehouses and where it's going?
It's more and more from, I would say, the offloading and on through the sorting stations at each one of our facilities that we support. It is more and more automated, less and less manual, and so it requires systems that can communicate with one another seamlessly, and the data is available at a moment's notice for the end client, yes, but also just to make sure the facility itself, the operations teams on those sites are aware of where every product is, are aware of where there are problems, and are aware of where they are ahead of schedule as well. And so it's, if everything needs to get to your door quicker, we need to be able to install it quicker and make sure it operates and is up and ready for our partners in doing that.
Ed, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I had to mosey over here real quick. I snuck in on you.
Nice.
Talk to me a little bit about, because operationally, you've done so much in terms of scale in businesses in your illustrious career. What is the reoccurring theme that you see that is just a non-negotiable that you have to have?
I think from a non-negotiable for me is, as simple as it sounds, is constant and continuous communication throughout the process of whatever it is that we are doing. I'll say from an industry standpoint, communication looks like visibility to the end client, visibility as to where their products are and how things are flowing through the system. From a partner-to-partner standpoint with other companies, our clients that we perform the work for, our communication needs to be, we put a lot of energy in making sure that we are open, available, but also proactively communicating back to our clients. Clients being those we're performing the work for, but then also our clients that are delivering our partners, if you will, that are giving us the equipment, giving us the materials from which we're taking it from. And so communication in both directions is paramount, I think, from across all industries. And it can lead to problems when there's gaps, and it can make things go so much more smoother, because problems do come up. Disconnects happen, but the communication can help really mitigate those impacts.
Communication is key.
So Malcolm alluded to it a little bit in this question, and I want to back up a little bit and tell us about logistics and all the things you do that are truly the logistics of all of this. Not, we call 3PLs and logistics, and we're just really talking about the trucking part. Like, you truly do the logistics of all of it. Tell us a little bit more about your background, because I think it's a complicated process of all the things that you do, and your background speaks really well to getting you prepared for that and being able to see this for your clients, and you're a veteran, and I want to hear more about that.
Sure. So I went to college in Pennsylvania, Gettysburg College, go Bullets. And I spent 12 years in the United States Marine Corps as a logistics officer in the Marine Corps from 1996 to 2008. Okay. And so got a chance to learn so much, obviously, in military service, but as a logistics officer in the Marine Corps, things needed to be delivered, things needed to be on time. It wasn't an option to not have things there, and talk about the value of communication and being able to plan ahead of time, but then also execute and communicating while you're executing. Learned so much of the value in that, in supporting your internal customers, in supporting your external customers. And so that really set the bar for me. And then, as a Marine officer, just you get thrown into the gauntlet of leadership and skills and opportunities to lead people all around the world. And so it was fantastic for me. And then leaving active duty, had a chance to work for a number of large Fortune 500 companies, if you will, some consulting firms in which you had a chance really to partner with large organizations around the country and learn how they work, learn how they tick, see what. It was encouraging to see even the large companies, and I won't name them, but they have their challenges with communications. Yeah. They have their challenges with departments not being too siloed and not communicating with one another. And so pulling all those things together, that's why when Malcolm asked the value of communicating with your suppliers, your customers, and then definitely internally, it's been a constant theme throughout my career in the value thereof. Last thing I would say is really spending that time upfront, understanding what your clients' needs are. In the 3PL world, there's so many different aspects to it in which careers are made in just one of those slices or whatnot. Logistics, we span a little bit of a large width of that, and so we make sure what is critical to our client. What are they coming to us for, and how do we need to deliver that? And then I would say we also then understand their needs, and then let us be the duty experts. Let us consult you. Let us implement the solution for you. And sometimes we allow our customers to be too involved in that implementation process. And I want to say that lightly. Like, let us handle this for you. Yeah. We will put the solution in place and make sure the communication and the touch points are there to make sure we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, so I think that speaks really very specifically to the 3 C's in the 3PL industry that I think I've heard you reference before, consult, collaborate, and communicate. Mm-hmm. It sounds like your offering to your clients is highly customized. Can you give us some examples of when that works really well?
Sure. We had a large online retailer approach us, and they have fulfillment centers all over the country, and they needed a certain type of equipment and technology installed across 300 different sites. And so when talking about collaborating with them, hey, let's understand what the end goal needs to look like. Literally, what is this technology? What does this look like? What does it do? What are the soft points with that could be a problem for us and that we need to be aware of? And then how do we take it from your manufacturing sites and distribute it to all of your distribution centers? And so a lot of collaboration on the front end for that. We incorporated our warehousing assets here in Chattanooga to bring things in place, to kit them, to organize them, and then distribute them throughout the country. And so there was an element there. I'll tip my hat to our customer in the sense of allowing us to consult them. And really, we collaborated for several months on what that solution would look like, and then brought things here to our location and distributed from there. out to each site. And then that's really when the work in the installation space, that's where we started to, all right, now we're going to install this on your site. It's a live site. How do we stay out of the way of the operation, but yet how do we stick to the timelines in which we agreed upon? And so it allowed us to, again, collaborate up front, consult up front, collaborate in the solution, and then executing, keeping them up to date throughout. Escalate it when we need to. Hey, there was a problem here. What do you recommend? But they didn't need to be involved in every single step. That's what they hired us to handle, and we were the duty experts in that.
I'm all about outsourcing what you can, even personally.
We are big.
Really,
We are big fans. We know what we're good at, but we also, more importantly, know what we're not good at, and we outsource to experts. Someone like FreightWaves, you bring in an expert to do what they've done for hundreds, if not thousands, of other clients like us. Let them do that for you, and you stick to the areas in which you're good at.
Yeah, I'm not good at cleaning my house. I'm happy to outsource that, right?
Couldn't agree more. When it comes to Chattanooga, we kicked off the show, right?
Yes.
We talked about Chattanooga. They pulled a fast one on me and pulled up a magazine cover I was recently in. I'm gonna get y'all for that. But my question for you is this could have happened anywhere, right? Chattanooga for you, why? Why Chattanooga?
I love the community here in Chattanooga. Yes, we are a small town, but we're very diverse, and I like when I have people visit, friends and family visit from out of town. It's not as small as they thought, and there's a lot more to this community. It's a lot more to this. To our economy here in Chattanooga, and a big fan of the diversity in which we have across the entire region. Diversity in terms of the people that we see, diversity in terms of backgrounds from all over the country. I'm a New Jersey native, and I'm loving it here in Tennessee, in Chattanooga specifically. And I even tried to leave once, and it lasted less than a year, and I came back because I missed it.
Same.
And then I think within our industry, our physical location is strategic to get to different parts of the country easily, but then also the 3PL presence here, coupled with our technology and the local economy here that supports small businesses like us, but supports businesses coming here to work and operate inside of Chattanooga. I think that's what stands out
For sure.
to me, and I think is a little bit of the secret sauce. Those are a couple of the ingredients. I can't list them all because I don't know them all yet.
Can't get the entire recipe.
Yes, yeah, that's a few pieces of it.
I want to double down on this before I toss it back to Julie, because the thing for me in Chattanooga per capita, the amount of logistics companies is crazy.
Yes.
I mean, it feels like if I were to go to a Publix down the street, pull 10 people aside, at least 5 of them work either in or around the 3PL atmosphere in logistics. What makes you and your team and organization stick out in comparison to everybody else because the population is so dense?
I think what makes us stand out is our ability to recognize what we're good at, focus on those areas, and then realistically understand we don't need to get into everything that is 3PL related. We stick to our strengths. We give a lot of feedback internally. We ask and request feedback from our partners on what we can improve upon, and then we actually take action on those recommendations and those improvements. Specifically, when we execute, we have a standard in which we want to deliver, but also make sure that if we need to pivot along the way, we're able to do that. Because in this world, in this industry, things don't go as planned.
Ever.
Things change left and right, and you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to call audibles. And that's step one, if you will. Then what happens as a result of that? Who do I communicate that back to? Who do I get approval from before I do it? And all of those things, again, and I'm sorry to bring it back up, but from a communication standpoint, if all of those things are well-oiled machines and we do that on a consistent cadence, when something does come up, it's not a catastrophe. We've handled this before. We can adjust, we can pivot, and still meet the objective. And so that's key to how we operate at logistics. We have a saying, the work is the work. Sometimes
work is the work.
It's people can load trucks and unload trucks. People can send trucks to places. We can build things and we can install things. just like other people can. How do we do it and how do we communicate with you ahead of time, during and afterwards, is what makes us stand out, and our ability to pivot as needed.
It's very well said.
So what does the future and growth look like going forward, 2026 and beyond for logistics?
Two areas in which we're focused on growing our business is within the freight capabilities and growing our freight arm of the company, as well as our warehousing. Our installation, consulting, and assembly services that we perform in spaces, that's a strong core of our business, and always looking to add new logos to that. And thankfully, advances in technology keep those retrofits coming, keep those improvements coming that keep us busy there. Our focus for the second half of 2026 and beyond is really growing our freight arm, as well as supporting more Chattanooga businesses with our warehousing footprint here in the area. We have space. We know there are large companies, but then also small companies in which we can support them directly with some of our space, and not in their warehousing of their own, but storing and distributing for them here locally in our warehouses.
So speaking of that, I want to talk about the warehousing industry and market around that, and warehousing costs a little bit.
Okay.
It's obviously e-commerce has continued to grow and thrive, huge explosion during COVID, and it doesn't seem like that has stopped or is going to stop. What does that mean for warehouse availability, capacity, and pricing?
I think for availability, warehousing is at an all-time premium right now in terms of where do you have space and how can you use that space to support your clients. And so it is, if you have square footage and you're not putting it to good use, that's on you. You need to get that fixed and let another company operate from it, or let them store things and make it an operational space for them. I think from how you get into that market or get into that space, I think be realistic with who do we want to support, what can we handle capacity-wise, and how do we want to operate? Do I want this to be? Do I want all 10 of my dock doors? Do I want them occupied at all times? Am I ready to commit to that? And I would just say, back to our point earlier, if you're not sure exactly what you want to look like operationally, there's people out there that can help you make those decisions. What are you ready for? What aren't you ready for? And you have to do the planning ahead of time, or really the strategic thinking of what space do we want to operate and who do we want to support. Online retail is, you need to have systems that have accurate data. You need to be able to share that data quickly, and you need to be able to act on data when things change. And so if you're going to get into this space, there's people who can help you, if you don't have it already, who can help you get those three things. And if you do have it, then decide how, to whom do I want to support, and how do I go after those markets? They're there. They need the help. They need the support. You just have to be willing to get in front of them and tell them how you can.
This has been great. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being live in studio. Thank you for telling us about everything that your organization does and a little bit about the market. Appreciate it. Hope you'll come back sometime. And we are going to take a minute and get into this owner update.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara Driving Coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on Masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited and I hope to see you in class.
Mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
Welcome back. We are going to get into a quick sonar update that Craig pre-recorded from the LaGuardia Airport this morning to the man who never sleeps. Goodness gracious, I don't know how he does it all.
Me neither.
But we're going to play the sonar update for you now.
Well, I'm in LaGuardia Airport, just flew in from Chattanooga. I'm going to be in New York for the day, so I'm going to miss FreightWaves Today. I'm sorry I'm not going to be there. You're in great hands. We have Julie and Malcolm, and then Zach Strickland's going to be on today. We're going to hear from the author of the LMI report, which I think is really important because obviously the LMI, the data that we got in the LMI report is just talking about this upstream industrial renaissance, this surge of activity that's happening, and really bullish signs. We're not seeing inventory builds downstream because retailers are incredibly cautious about the economy. But Zach Rogers, one of the authors of the LMI report, is going to talk about that. ISM is also super strong. Really excited fact that the ISM survey data came in incredibly strong. Tender rejections have hit a cycle high. We're well over 17%. We right under it yesterday. We broke through it. We're about 17 and a half approximately. That is a real strong sign. Just in the past 2 days, we've moved up an entire point. It's just how tight this market is. It's an incredibly strong bull market. Trucking spot rates on the 7-day moving average are up to 371. We're seeing, again, tightening. There's no signs that capacity is coming in. One of the things I went and looked at is compared this cycle, this tightening cycle, this increasing rates to COVID. And what I discovered was just, frankly, how bullish and how fast trucking spot rates have moved over the past couple of months. So if we look at it from where we started in November to today, it's been about 29 weeks, and we've seen this dramatic increase of $1.38 in trucking spot rates. If we go back to where we were during COVID, that took over 40 weeks to do the same increase, to see the same increase from really mid-April in 2020 to February of 2021. And I just think that's really a testament to just how strong this market is. Now, one thing that is fair to say is that when you take fuel's been a component of the increase. You remove it, we're not yet at records, but we will likely be there by next week. We're about 10 cents off of the all-time record net of fuel. And so carriers rightfully will say, hey, I'm not doing as well as I did during COVID. I've got additional cost increases. They're right when they say that. Aaron Graff pointed that out on FreightWaves Today. But I do think when you look at the clearing price of what brokers and shippers are paying in the market, they're clearly paying the top rates that they paid in many, many years and frankly ever. And so this is an incredible market. This is a really strong and resilient market. We got the railroad data yesterday. The American Association of Railroads every single Wednesday puts out a report. We had Bill Stevens on the air. He's the editor of Trains and Trains.com, and he was basically talking about just how strong and bullish these data points are. Railroads, if you look at it on a commodity basis, the reason I really like the railroad data is because it tracks the industrial sector. Commodities and industrials is really the lifeblood of railroads. And therefore, if you want to know the health of the industrial sector, you get some advanced inputs. I want to have you look at the coke number. That's not something you drink. Coke is what goes into the furnaces, goes into the raw materials that build steel and all the metals that we enjoy. That's up over 50%. Really strong. In fact, rail volumes are really strong. Coal is the sort of king coal. It has historically been the largest commodity for the railroads. Continued decline. It's down 9%. But when you look at it overall, railroads year over year are still up 2%. That doesn't seem like a huge number. Take that coal out of it and realize that rail volumes are heavily tied to the overall economy, particularly the goods economy and the industrial economy. We are seeing growth of it. So I think that's a real positive sign. Every single report we've gotten this week on FreightWaves Today has told us the same thing. The economy is doing well, and the consumer is surprisingly doing well. Everyone's talked about, hey, we have strong industrial activity, but I think that every CEO we've talked to over the last couple of days has said consumer is hanging in there, and it's actually doing quite well. Much more so than anyone expected. We heard it from Rob Estes on Monday. We heard it from Shelley Simpson that they're seeing constructive feedback. Gene Soroka, the head of the Port of LA, again, consumer activity strong. Retail imports is a big piece of the container market. So they certainly feel it when imports are up or down, particularly for consumer activity. We had ShipStation CEO yesterday talk about consumers doing well. So there's no reason to be bearish whatsoever. Everyone is talking about how strong this market is and how resilient it is. And so, look, I couldn't be more bullish, and there's no reason to think it's going to slow down. And there's no reason to think capacity is coming in. Ultimately, it's the driver availability. We're not getting new drivers to come into the market. I regret that I won't be there today. You're in great hands, Julie. Have a great show, and I'll be back on the air tomorrow.
All right, that was great from Craig. There's a couple of points I really want to get into. I don't want to talk about the LMI because they're going to talk about that in FreightOnomics, the second hour of our show today. But I do think we can continue to talk about tender rejections. Again, a new cycle high today at 17.5%. Wow. So we have moved more than an entire point in 2 days. That's a quick upswing that we're continuing to see. It's not a blip. We're continuing to see it move forward. I think that's amazing. Spot rates up to 371, continuing to tighten. And I think the most interesting thing that Craig said there was that if you compare this recent cycle to COVID and you look at the 2020 numbers and the 2021 numbers, and we showed a graphic of that too, taking out the years between, it took 29 weeks this time for a $1.38 increase. Whereas even in COVID, which I think most of us think was kind of the craziest upswing we had ever seen in a quick amount of time, that same dollar amount increase took 40 weeks, which granted fuel is a factor right now, but it still doesn't change the directional accuracy of that and the speed to which that has happened.
It's crazy for sure.
I think the last important point there is that intermodal is now bullish too. That's something that's really started changing in the last couple of weeks, which I love. It's again, all of that upstream stuff. When you look at the commodities for rail data, that upstream, the ingredients, if you will, of what goes into manufacturing are continuing to increase. So I think that's going to show that demand will continue to increase. And we're, again, I'm going to say it. I think I've said it 2 or 3 times today. I said it yesterday. Craig says it all the time. Manufacturing is incredibly strong.
Yeah, no, it's been a reoccurring theme, and will continue to be a reoccurring theme. And the conversations that have been had, not only, I mean, obviously on What the Truck, but here specifically on FreightWaves Today, it just shows that again, like, hey, this is a good time. Like, we don't have to be bearish, but we can be bullish when it comes to this market and the current environment. So there's it's been a wild time, but now I think the tides are turning. That's what my dad used to say. So
I do too.
All right,
we're going to hear quickly from one of our sponsors.
Yes, we will. Because in freight, again, your customer experience is everything. Every quote, order, and status update is a chance to win or lose a customer, but that will still, again, run on manual disconnected systems. Pallet is the leading enterprise AI built for the supply chain, automating costly operations from code to cash across brokerages, carriers, forwarders, shippers, and warehouses. Mallory Alexander serves 3 times more customers per operator, deliver an exceptional customer experience at scale. Visit them right now at pallet.com. All right, and I told you guys, have been telling a lot of different stories this week, and we're gonna have another person come on the show, and it is going to be fantastic. I'll tease this, but you'll see them in just a few moments. Stick around, more FreightWaves Today coming up soon.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
The super successful people are part of the 1%. They're part of that very, very small percentage. That's why I don't want you to do things that everybody's doing. I want you to do the small things that nobody else is doing. The people that are most successful in this business treat it like it's the only thing that's bringing income into their household. If you do that, then you'll have the same results. These people operate like they have no other chance. They have nothing else going. This is the only breadwinner that they have in play. I'm Adam Wingfield, and this is the FreightWaves Playbook. Become part of the 1%. Sign up for FreightWaves Playbook today.
The map is changing. As global uncertainties rise, the future of the supply chain is moving closer to home. Welcome to the new coast-to-coast North American network. Driven by massive reshoring trends and next-gen industrial innovation, optimized by AI workflows that build unshakable operational resilience, and locked down by proactive security against evolving freight fraud. Are you ready to navigate the shift? Join the industry's top minds to build the future. The FreightWaves Domestic Supply Chain Summit, streaming live June 17th. Register for free at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. We are here joined by Mike Kolff, Director of Transportation, Inventory, and Distribution. That's been one I've had to reference over and over again. You have a very long title. You do a lot of things at Opella. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about Opella, what you all do, and the organization as a whole.
Sure. Opella is a consumer healthcare company. We manufacture products like Allegra, Icy Hot, Act mouthwash, Localized, Unisom. So a lot of different brands that consumers use on a daily basis. Ironically, we manufacture almost 80% of that here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we distribute 100% of our product out of Chattanooga. So a large base here in Chattanooga, and we've called Chattanooga home since the late 1800s. So several name changes along the way. A lot of people here in Chattanooga know us as Chatham.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Such a great story to highlight Chattanooga and how amazing it is, which fits so well with everything we've been talking about today. Tell us, so the logistics landscape has been pretty crazy, I would say, as of late. Always crazy, but certainly more volatile than it has been in the recent past. Tell us how Opella has adapted to that landscape recently.
Yeah, so a couple of different things that we're working on. I mentioned 100% of our freight is out of Chattanooga. We are going to regionalize that. We're working on that. That's something we've been working on for a while. A lot of risk to have all of your eggs in one basket, and then just the amount of miles that you're on the road, putting your freight in jeopardy. OTIF is a big important key for us as a company, and we need to be hit our customers when they want us to, and the windows are tightening from when they want us to be there. So that's important, and the closer we can get to our customer, the better off we think we are. So.
I love talking about OTIF, mostly because I don't have to worry about OTIF anymore, and I did for so long in my life, especially when I was involved in Dedicated and we were delivering to a lot of large retailers. For those watching who don't know, OTIF is on time in full. So other than those things that you mentioned as far as regionalizing, what are you guys doing to ensure that you hit those targets?
Yeah, so I mean, we have to work a little closer with our providers, right, to make sure that we're getting the carrier support that we need, looking at just different avenues on that side, but then also working with our customers to see if the order patterns can change to make us a little bit more effective, right? Make sure that we can get to the West Coast or whatever it needs to be in a timely fashion, and not always be late just because we don't have the lead time. But our industry, it's very short lead times. I mean, you have to turn fast, and any little hiccup along the way could cause a problem. And so we're trying to minimize as many of those potential issues as we can.
What is average lead time?
So in some cases, some of our big customers will get an order today and it may need to ship tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, wow.
But normally 48 hours, I would say, is some good lead time on our orders. Those are very routine orders, though. We know we always get an order on a specific day, and so we have built some lanes and some processes to accomplish that. Yeah.
Mike, I was doing my research, and you're a man of distinction because we are both Tennessee Volunteers.
There we go,
so
yeah.
That's the Go Vols.
Yeah, Go Vols.
Talk to me a little bit about the things. Obviously, there's so many moving parts of this deal. Talk to specifically the things keeping you up at night when it comes to the organization, and just the problems that you have seen reoccurring and the solutions that you and the rest of the team, I'm sure, are discussing, if not weekly, daily.
Yeah. We talk OTIF, and that is such a critical thing for us. Coming out of the COVID crisis and everything, we just never could get enough product produced to meet the demand. And I would say it really took us to probably the end of 24 to really feel like we had everything in control on enough product. And then now the focus is kind of shift to, can we get it there on time, right? But it's been interesting. Nothing stays the same in supply chain, right? So there's always something keeping you up at night. Most recently, I think freight security has been a problem of ours, because we have seen, you don't see it for 30, 40 years, and then all of a sudden, shipments that are stolen, and we've learned a lot over the last couple of years as far as freight security is concerned.
That was a perfect segue to my next question, because we just coming off of the Freight Fraud Symposium here at FreightWaves in Cleveland, Ohio. It was a lot of conversations with the FMCSA, the FBI. I mean, there's so many just different things, and these bad actors are just in the space, and you just don't know what you don't know. So could you speak to a little bit about just, again, the theft and saying, all right, like, our processes have to be different. I mean, even just from a shipper perspective, it's mind-blowing when you really think about it.
What are you doing to mitigate some of that?
Yeah, so recently we've added a a monitoring system, so to speak. It's a company that we met with that actually will monitor our freight, and so we have the ability to track real time where our truckload freight is. And ironically, we did have an issue, and we reached out to the carrier immediately. They're saying, no, it's in Nebraska, and we're saying, no, it's sitting in Chicago right now in a residential area, and the police are on the way, right? So we actually know, to some extent, a little bit better than the carrier knows where our product is.
How about it? That's awesome. That's great stuff.
Tell us a little bit more about not just in transit, right, how you're tracking your freight, but overall technology and inventory management, the data behind that. Now you've got data on where your loads are, but tell us about it when it gets more into the manufacturing part and inventory control and those sorts of things.
That's really, I would say, one of our areas of weaknesses. We're working a lot to improve that, whether it be through AI or just improving our systems. So that will be a huge focus for us over the next several years, because the one thing is we may have the data, but we just can't get the data into a format that we can use it, and so that'll be a huge focus for us. But anything that we are looking at right now is looking towards the future and what can we use with the data and how do we manage it better.
So I'm going to come back at the end and ask about the freight market, but since you mentioned the future, what is the future of consumer healthcare logistics look like?
Oh, great question. I think there's always going to be innovation out there. We've kind of built our portfolio around procuring existing brands from other customers over the years. But then when we were part of Sanofi for a while, and we took brands that were prescriptions over the counter. And so I think there's going to be still a lot of that, and those are phenomenal events. I mean, it's to where a point to where, on day one, you have to have it on every shelf in every retailer. And a lot of times you don't get the approval from the FDA until, just a couple of months before that. So being able to execute that, is critical. I see, several of those coming in the horizon for several of the companies that are in our space. But we were kind of one of the last ones to do it. The pharmaceutical companies have spun off most of their consumer health care. So literally just about a year ago, we were spun off. And so that created the Opella name for us. And so I think, we're standalone, so we're going to act a lot more like a consumer goods, not necessarily a healthcare company, but we still have some of the ties to the healthcare industry where we're a little bit more rigid with our product efficacy and making sure that there's no tampering, that type of thing. So that's still a huge importance in our world.
Theme of the show, ironically, has been Chattanooga. We've talked about it in our first segment. We talked about it with our previous guest. As innovation happens with the company, which with Opella, it will. It's happening as we speak. Chattanooga seems to still be at the forefront. I mean, since the 1800s you mentioned in the segment. Why, as there's been evolution, has Chattanooga remained kind of in the core fabric of Opella?
Yeah, so it is ironic. We do have some offices in other areas, but all of our manufacturing and supply chain is based out of Chattanooga for the North America region.
Of course.
The people here are really dedicated. We have a diverse group, we have several people that are still working with the company that have been there 40, 50, 60 years, wow. Right? And then there's a huge gap. And then it's like 10 to, less than 10 years. So unfortunately, we have that gap, but we operate still like a family company. We are somewhat secluded from the rest. I mean, Opella is a large multinational. We're based out of France, but we do kind of have some autonomy here locally, and I think we embrace that, and I think it shows in our metrics. It shows in how quick to market we are with our products, and it kind of affords us to be left alone a little bit from time to time, but it's a luxury, yeah.
It is a luxury. Living in Chattanooga is a luxury, if we're being honest.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm not from here, but adore it now. Yeah. Okay, I always want to talk about the freight market.
Yep.
Tell us what you guys are seeing. Obviously, there are a lot of inputs going into it, and are you finding it hard to find capacity? How are you guys dealing with that?
Yeah, so it is ironic. So January, we launched an RFP for truckload freight and was feeling really good about where we were going. And go live was April 20th.
Shoot, I wish that would have been a little earlier. That would have been great for you. January was the perfect time to launch it.
The week before was like chaos, right? So we are seeing carriers back off of their commitments, both pricing wise and just availability. Some of that is getting better. We have gone back and had to renegotiate some pricing, but yeah, the third carrier in line is getting a decent amount of freight from us because 1 and 2 just can't support it. So it's been tough.
And how do you guys all handle that? Do you have a set percentage of freight that you try to keep in transactional versus committed and contracted? Obviously, I'm sure there are surges and projects that go outside of that. Do you try to track a certain metric there?
Yeah. So on our outbound freight to our customers, ideally 100% of it would be, contract and first carrier takes it and everything's fine. But, clearly we've not seen that. On the inbound side, it is a lot more spot related because, the consistency is not there, that type of thing. But yeah, our goal is to work with the carriers. We understand that, there's some good reasons why capacity is getting tight, right? We want the security of a good carrier. We don't want somebody that is a rogue carrier. And we have to pay for it, right? So we got to find that fine line of what is fair, and then hopefully the fuel pricing stabilizes and maybe comes back in line. But a fair fuel surcharge, we want to make sure we have that in place as well, and we do.
So prior to this year, was most of your outbound still contracted and committed, even though you could have paid less on spot?
Yeah, I mean it was contracted. I would say that there probably was an opportunity to pay some, in some cases, cheaper spot rates, but we felt like it was important to keep up the commitment with the carriers that we had.
You guys hearing that, carriers? They kept freight
the capacity
through this down market going to their contracted carriers. So hopefully some of those commitments hold back through this market now,
they'll
right?
return to favor, absolutely.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk on is freight brokers. I know back in my career when I worked with Chatham, brokerage was not something that you guys really did. It was really asset-based carriers. Is that how are you guys managing that through this kind of crazy environment as capacity gets tighter and tighter?
Well, the market has shifted, in my opinion, to heavy brokerage. So you almost can't cover everything you need with asset. We have had to go to the brokerage. And sometimes, it does get you some better pricing, right? Mm-hmm. But you do lose some of the control of the relationship with the carrier. But, I think even with some of the asset base, they're brokers now, right? So sometimes you don't, it may be their logo on the trailer, but it may not be their driver. So you do face that a little bit too. But.
If you had, I guess, one takeaway for our viewers to remember from this segment, what would it be?
I think commitments, honoring commitments is big for us. We try to make sure that we do that to the carriers, but it's a different world and it changes so fast now. You made the comment earlier, it just. I'm amazed at how fast the market has changed, and I think it's because everybody has data now, and they can get it a lot faster. And so everybody's just a little bit ahead of the curve, maybe, but they're reacting with that data.
Ooh, I love that. Real-time, high-frequency data. I know somewhere people can find that, both on freight markets and rates. So obviously I'm talking about sonar. Huh. Okay. Mike, this has been great. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking time to come into
Yes, thanks for having me.
Studio and to talk about what you guys are doing in your organization and share some of your knowledge. It's been really great. Hope you'll be able to come back sometime.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we are going to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back in a little bit.
That was a great conversation again. Thank you so much to Mike Kolff with Opella. And also, we've had great conversations this week with guys like Michael Caney, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at Highway. And with that being said, every load you move depends on one thing, knowing who's on the other side. And Highway gives freight brokers the carrier identity tools to verify carriers, secure the load, and book with confidence. The performance guarantee puts up $100,000 behind that promise. Real money behind the standard. No other freight technology company has made that commitment. This is, again, Highway, the standard for carrier identity. Thanks so much to Highway for all that you guys do. Now, with this being said, this has been a great first hour of FreightWaves Today. I'm really excited for what's to come because this guy is extraordinary. He is, to me, the one who has the best ear at FreightWaves when it comes to music, but you guys know him as the captain of Freightonomics. So with that being said, we have more FreightWaves Today coming up with my guy, Zach Strickland. Guys, stick around.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on Masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited and I hope to see you in class.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse. What if your visibility didn't just tell you where a truck was, but exactly where it needed to be 48 hours from now? Think of a logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FreightWaves Today. It's been a great episode, and second hour is just getting started. Let's get to the Freightonomics of it all. And joining me again is the guy, you guys know this man very well, Zach Strickland. Zach, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. Freightonomics on FreightWaves Today.
Come on.
I mean,
Come on.
let's go.
Debut.
A full debut of an hour for those of you that aren't familiar with Freightonomics. Welcome to the show. We combine freight market dynamics and economics into something.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
So Malcolm, you're kind of kicking us off here on the inaugural FreightWaves Today version of Freightonomics, but traditionally what I do is I kick off with a market in two where I throw a bunch of data at our viewers to get them started.
Okay, well,
If you want to count me in, we
just a simple 3, 2, 1.
just you however you want to do it.
All right, let's go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's kick things off. The first chart of the market in two is going to be the S-Tri Sonar Truckload Rejection Index. You've seen Craig throw this up here this week. This is the seasonality view, and you can see clearly that the white line there, which is the current year's tender rejection rate, is way above the one of the last 3 years, and we're continuing to see that climb. I think a lot of people expected this number to start to decline a little bit after Memorial Day, but we've had some nuance this year in the form of broker liability, continued capacity exodus that has really kept this market on its heels, and it looks like it is not showing any sign of slowing down, at least in the month of June. Seasonally speaking, there is not a lot of reason to expect it to slow down until about mid to late July. So let's go to the next chart. Dive on in to the WRI map. If we have that one pulled up. So this is just going to show you where in the country our rejection rates continuing to climb the most meaningfully when we combine volume and weekly change in rejection rate. And that looks like the Southeast and portions of the upper Midwest around Indianapolis, Columbus, Ohio, a lot of DCs and everything. And then we also have the West Coast remaining to stay active. It's produce season out there, so probably a little bit of influence there, but we are watching the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach for some pressure later in the year. Let's go to the next chart. There's going to be the spot rates, NTI, FTI, and RTI, all of them continuing to climb. There is no sign of pausing here. Continued pressure on the van market that seems to be outpacing the refrigerated market. Still, flatbed just seems to be there's no end to that. Let's go to the next chart. Look at the van spot rate map. Notice all the blue. Those are all increasing markets over the last 4 days. Not a lot of red on here. The Northeast appears to be the softest, and now we're starting to see a little bit of that softening signal going down in the Florida markets. Let's go to the last map here and look at the refrigerated side. Again, somewhat surprising that refrigerated has more downward pressure than a lot of the van market pressure has existed. So, the red there in the mountain region, not terribly unexpected, but at the same time, the way this market continues to just exceed expectations. I don't like, there's always some sort of nuance every time we see these market flips. And I would not have called like the refrigerated market being one of the ones that had a little bit of a quieter start here.
Not at all. I just have to say real quick, you make the hard stuff look so simple. I'm sitting over here in amazement because this guy, I mean, kudos to you, man. Seriously, this is awesome. This is awesome. And with that, I just want to say, I'm not saying I got to go home, but I got to get up out of here. And that's the thing. I cannot stay here. That's the saying. And I said that you made.
Do we need to put on closing time?
No. We're good. We're good. You make the hard things look simple, but also RXO can also make it simple as well. You guys see what I did there? Because get reliable, again, capacity, and it can be complicated. RXO makes it simple. As the third largest provider of broker transportation in North America, RXO has the scale, resources, and expertise to help you tackle any shipping challenges. From a last-minute spot load to a managed transportation solution, from LTL to intermodal, from train logistics experts to, again, AI-powered freight automations, RXO has you covered from first mile to last mile. Start shipping on easy mode with RXO and get smart solutions to move your freight today. Learn more at rxo.com/capacity.
All right, Malcolm, man. Well, I appreciate you kicking us off today. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Freightonomics show, we have Dr. Zach Rogers coming on here in a little bit. He is going to give us a lot of update here on the Logistics Managers Index, which he co-authors with several of his compadres out there. But first off, I want to run through a few things, and I also kind of want to set the table for our friend, Dr. Rogers. Economically speaking, we have had quite a bit of activity here over the last bit. The ISM came out, and it looks like, we heard Craig talk about this earlier in the week. The manufacturing sector, a bit of a conundrum to me. I think data center production and things like that really having an influence here domestically, and it's creating a little bit of muddiness in the interpretation ability, at least on my end. I'm not a full-blown economist by any means, but ISM continues to show expansionary signals. You'd see the new orders growing, production, employment contracting, deliveries are slowing, raw material inventories are contracting, kind of a positive signal there when we see inventories start to decline faster than they get replenished. And then customer inventories are too low. So it's almost like there's a signal here in the ISM that suggests the manufacturing sector, and Dr. Zach Rogers has said this in the past, where we see a little bit of this cautious ordering, where we see a little bit of pull forward, but maybe not enough to commit to the rest of the year because we're keeping our customer inventories too low. And maybe the demand is exceeding expectations in the manufacturing sector. So I do feel like there is something to really unpack here, and we'll get him on in a minute. Industrial production also continuing to grow here over the last bit. Like this is some of the strongest industrial production activity. Of course, we're talking about mining, energy, utilities, all involved here. And of course, energy, a huge component of what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz as that begins to really drag on longer than a lot of people expected. In the news, there's a big story that's kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit buried right now. And it's in the form of a tariff that the administration has said that they are going to levy an additional 10 to 12.5% tariffs on about 60 countries for utilizing forced labor or goods manufactured with forced labor, and they haven't necessarily done enough to curtail this. The economics of this are obvious. The moral reasons are also obvious, but there's also a little bit of distrust going on in the global economic environment right now in terms of the motivation behind these, as the administration in the past has really shown their emotional frustration with not being able to levy the IEEPA tariffs, which got struck down in January. So these look eerily similar to what we saw there. And so, again, nobody wants forced labor or anything like that, but that goes under review July 7th. So there's going to be time. Obviously, some businesses have stated that there is no validity to this, and they're going to get their chance to voice that at the hearing. So definitely something to look for. Some of the countries involved, Canada, Mexico, they've stated that Mexico, anything negotiated under the USMCA agreement is going to be exempt. So it's not everything there. They're on the table for about a 10% additional tariff on those goods. We've got Taiwan also on that 10% docket, or slated for that 10% increase. China, Japan, India, Vietnam also face 12.5% because that tier is supposedly not doing enough to enforce. They're not doing anything to enforce this forced labor manufacturing caveat that's going on. So the next piece of the story here, Stuart Charles wrote an article this week on, we've got the box rates shooting up. I wrote a chart of the week on this last week about rates on the ocean, maritime container rates increasing pretty significantly. They just took another GRI on the heels of the article that I wrote. So Stuart definitely updates this one. Peak season surcharges are cited in here. We're about to hit that maritime peak cycle here in July-ish. I mean, nobody really knows when peak season is going to be anymore based on a lot of these trade policy or erratic movements. We traditionally see peak season for maritime imports late July into late August. That hasn't materialized yet, so there's not really a lot of demand-side signals going on here. Obviously, fuel costs are a component. It's inflationary for rates in general. This is going to be an ongoing story as we continue to unpack inflation and what that means, especially as a derivative of all of the input costs from energy and the subsequent lack thereof. So certainly going to be a story to watch moving forward. It's interesting that we're seeing rates percolate this early. And then we're also slated, he cites that come mid-June, there's also another GRI supposedly going to be implemented for a couple of the other carriers like CMA and CGM. So it's, this ongoing discussion about inflation. Transportation costs are inflating, and it's not necessarily entirely because of fuel, but it is part of the equation. The next thing that he states in this article is that fertilizer. So this is interesting to me, this angle of fertilizer. We don't realize how much of our stuff is a derivative of this region. It's not a heavy outbound outside of energy, but some of the things that are impacted, fertilizer, obviously it's the peak
season for produce and a lot of the crop rotations. If you read the Sonar sit rep that we have in there for the Sonar subscribers out there, we talk about how this is really the convergence of every single harvesting region in the that involves inbound into the United States occurs in June. We have this, it's not the peak season for necessarily the total volume for each region, but it's the convergence of all regions producing simultaneously that really drive a lot of this activity. California, of course, is in their peak harvest cycle out there on the West Coast, and it's something to monitor. But produce rates starting to increase, and I'm interested to see this one moving forward because this is transportation costs. The USDA, we're seeing produce rates increase. Now, if you look really closely at this chart, I've got a line buried in here called the RTI. You saw the RTI earlier in my Market in 2 update. RTI has this little, it's going up too. Some of these produce rates are increasing above, some of them are increasing less than the RTI. That is the market signal. So sometimes produce rates are just increasing, not because we see demand, but because the overall market is inflating these prices. And I think that's one of the big lessons here is that just because we're seeing rates increase does not mean that we're having the underlying demand characteristics in an environment like this. It is a very supply-centric type market where we're seeing this contraction really apply to rates. And I want to pull up the chart of the IOTI as I pull it back into the maritime space because we are not seeing huge signals from the bookings data. This is the inbound ocean TEUs index, which is the time of booking containers. So they haven't shipped yet, but they're about to. And then when they do, they hit the water, and it takes about 15 to 20 days, depending on where they are in the entire world, but 15-ish days from Shanghai to Los Angeles, Long Beach, which is a big lane corridor. It takes about 30 days to get to the East Coast from China. And of course, the Suez Canal and all that remains relatively closed and inoperable. But this is a very good leading indicator for demand side stuff here for about 6 to 8 weeks in advance. There's very retail-centric data set. So last year, that yellow line was peaking in late June, early July. And of course, the trade policy, I almost want to just erase the yellow line from this chart because last year was such an anomalous behavioral lack of seasonality type thing. We did see a pretty decent year-over-year growth in May in terms of overall imports, but it's because we had Liberation Day tariffs and China really removed from the equation for about a month there. So beating last year on imports, not a hard thing to do. But we are going to monitor, I think, looking here late July, if this index is not really showing signs of significant upward pressure or growth, we do have some concerns from a demand side economics standpoint. The last thing I want to hit on before I bring on Dr. Rogers is this diesel story. Now, the price of fuel. John Kingston was on earlier in the week. Please go back and watch him. He knows more than I ever will about anything about oil and crude prices and oil markets. But this is an interesting take because a lot of people think, oh, oil prices go up. That's what's driving transportation prices up. We've had this conversation a lot on this show. It's not always easy to pass along all these input costs. How many input costs, and we're going to talk about this here in a minute, in the form of PPI and CPI, there's a lot of input costs that happen underneath the retail figures to the consumer. They don't get passed along immediately. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes years before we see the underlying inflation on the input cost show up to the consumer. And that typically happens in transportation in the form of fuel prices or insurance costs or labor costs, et cetera. Everything that goes into moving freight doesn't necessarily always have an influence on the outward rate that you see. Diesel prices, if we pull up the chart, looking at retail and wholesale prices, we're seeing some downward pressure in oil. And John Kingston points out in his article here that this is somewhat of a conundrum. And I think this is just a byproduct of speculatory behavior in this market where we saw prices increase on the expectation of lower supply. So they're actually still not getting enough oil to keep those buffers restocked, which we are gradually working our way towards the bottom of that barrel. And a lot of the oil executives cited in this article state that they are actually seeing we're getting dangerously close to a threshold where we don't have enough buffer or stock, global energy supplies, mind you. So this is going to be a concern as the conflict continues to move. But in the meantime, the diesel market is signaling things are getting better and improving. And I don't know if the underlying thing is actually true here. So for now, enjoy a little bit of lower fuel and transportation prices, but not something I would think you want to just call off for the rest of the year, at least until we get some more clarity around that. One more thing, I know I said one more thing, but one more thing I want to call out about this market is the fact that we are encountering something that we haven't seen in 3 years. And it's in the form of rates going parabolic. And a lot of the conversations that I've had in the space, we've had lots of churn in the industry. For anybody that's procuring freight, transportation managers out there, everybody that's sitting behind a desk, if you just came into the industry in 2023, you think that transportation procurement is about the easiest job you've ever had. Now, if we pull up the chart on the NTI here, the spot, and this is spot rates, mind you, not contract rates, which are long-term and far more stable, although that's becoming less true. But the NTI I want to pull up here, this is the one with all three, but there's another chart that I had a box around. It's number 7 in my charts. I said, there we go. It's got the Bollinger Band around it. And I wanted to just highlight for those of you out there that are unaccustomed to this type of movement in a spot market. It's typical in financials. And we do see this in transportation markets where rates go up so fast that the market really has trouble dealing with it, because you could have taken last week's rate and applied it to today and expect that to stick. If you look at that thin shaded veiled area around this line, you'll notice that there's a line, and it's an average, and it's moving below the actual NTI line there. That means that rates are consistently moving above the average every day. And that's a 14-day moving average. So if you're thinking about last week's rates, you're already out of date. The rates are moving faster than the averages. And that's what a lot of data is based on, is averages or medians, the center point in the data sets. So it's anybody that's looking at data needs to keep in mind that when things are trending higher or lower, mind you, because it works the same way, that you need to apply a level of adjustment, because that is what, it's a lot of the financial markets. This is what they do. They look at the trend line analysis and they apply some sort of premium or discount based on the trend line to what they're looking at. So I highly suggest anyone out there procuring freight keeps in mind, especially on the spot market, that is not a contract or long-term rate chart that I was showing you, but the spot market is behaving very much like a commodities market type deal where we see inflation happening rapidly. So without further ado, I think I was able to really run through some stuff, Dr. Z. I wanted to get through a lot here, but we also have an hour today. So we've got plenty of time to really deep dive into the LMI and some of the economics that I want to talk to you about. But welcome to the new suited up Zach Strickland Freightonomics.
Hold on. I didn't realize we changed the dress code. Hold
on. There we go. There we go. Man.
All right. I'm ready. I'm ready for the new FreightWaves.
Look at you in the summer vacation mode in Colorado, having your suit and tie just ready to go and lecture.
Only for you guys. I might lose the tie because there are some limits to prop comedy on a freight podcast. All right, but yeah, let's talk about the LMI. And I think, by the way, appropriate that we are dressed up for it, because this is a big report in some ways. Yeah. We saw some real movements in our index this month. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Logistics Managers Index, we are a change index, very similar to the PMI, like what you're just talking about. In fact, we shamelessly borrowed their methodology, which they know about. They let us borrow it. And essentially, we ask a whole bunch of folks, director level and above, warehousing, transportation, inventories, going up, staying the same, going down from last month. And so we're going to throw a bunch of numbers at you here. Any number at 50 means it's the same. Below 50 is contraction. Above 50 is expansion. So with that in mind, The overall index this month was 69.5, which is pretty robust expansion in the logistics industry. Now that's down like, you know, zero point 0.4 points from April when it was 69.9, but 69.5 is still, you know, after April, I think the second highest reading we've had since March of 2022, which was sort of the come down from the previous bull cycle. So things are hot right now in the logistics industry. And you know, I'll let you tell me which one of these metrics you want me to talk about first.
Oh man, I think, you know, John Kingston, I was just talking about him and his article, but he gave me some advice years ago when I started at FreightWaves. Don't bury the lead. And I think the lead here is clearly the transportation signal, the one where we're seeing the alligator really open wide. And I mean, you said it in the report, it's an all-time high for anything, right?
It is. So transportation prices came in at 96, which, you know, our scale only goes to 100. And so transportation prices came on at 96, which is the highest number we've ever had for any metric. And, you know, we've been doing this since September 2016. So in a decade, basically, this is the biggest the biggest movement we've seen. And really what that speaks to is just the sort of unprecedented way that costs have been going up. You know, I know we're going to talk about the PPI in a minute. One thing I saw, you know, I was checking out the PCE earlier, and you know, we spent, I believe in April, because we have the April numbers. In April of 2025, U.S. consumers spent $418 billion on, you know, gasoline and other energy goods. In April 2026, it was $531 billion. So that's a 27% increase just at the consumer level, right? Like leaving out, right? So the PCE, so the producer. So, you know, that's not even really bring diesel into it much. I mean, you know, my father-in-law has a diesel truck, but, you know, he's fringe. But, you know, like, so there's, you know, there's some of that in there, but really the costs are going up so quickly. And on the other side of it, we see that capacity came in at a 31, and 31 that is up from last month when it was 28, but 31 is still a really rapid rate of contraction. Anytime those two lines are like 65 points apart, it means something is happening. I mean, those two spots you have circled there. One of those is the tax cut that happened in the first Trump administration that really sent things spiking. And then that second one there is when two presidents in a row gave us $1 trillion and we couldn't spend it on services. We had to spend it on goods. And so we're at that level. We are at this, like, you know, just meteor shock level right now with transportation. And here's the thing, that yellow line in this third round, that's steeper than either of those other two really were. And especially when contrasted with the steepness that the white line is falling at. I mean, it was only last fall when actually the white line was above the yellow line. And so to change this fast really is pretty phenomenal. And by the way, digging a little deeper into it, it's the smallest ones. You know, the 96 is our biggest number we've ever had, but we always divide this up into different sort of cross sections of the data. Our smallest firms, respondents with 1,000 employees or less, they reported a 98.2 for transportation price, which that is truly, I mean, you can't really go higher. That's basically 100. And so it's really hitting the small firms even disproportionately more than the large firms, which, you know, reported a paltry 93.3.
Paltry 93.3. Yeah, I liked your explanation on, you know, anything basically above 80 is just a statistical nightmare for anyone, or below. Is it below 30 and above 80? That's kind of like in that. We don't see that often.
Once you're below 30 or above 80, we're in sort of an unsustainable pace of movement.
Yeah. So on that note about it's interesting to me. We've been talking about this like K-shaped economy and divergence of experience. Like the haves kind of have the ability to kind of walk through the water a little bit better than some of these have-nots or the smaller operators. What's your take on the shipping community here in terms of the small businesses? Like, are they really feeling this like disproportionately because they don't have the buying power? What's the story there?
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
And we also see in the difference in their inventories. So large firms reported inventory level growth at a 59.5. Small firms are 51. So that's like an 8-point difference. Basically, small firms are not building inventories up that quickly, partly because the cost is so prohibitive. I mean, they said 51 for inventory levels and an 85 for inventory costs. So that's a 34-point spread. And by the way, the average spread for costs and inventory levels is about 13 points. And it's 35 right now for our smallest firms. And really it comes down to capacity is very tight. Their warehouse capacity is 44. Big firms have a 58. And because they don't have enough space, and their cost, by the way, 85 for inventory, 71.5 for price, 98 for transportation price. That's 71's warehousing. They have like 255 points out of 300 for cost growth. The cost is just disproportionately higher on small firms because of supply and demand stuff. It's going to be more spot in there. It's going to be getting boxed out of like the warehousing space that they would really like to have in some ways. And once again, the other piece we see here is that it's not just the smaller folks, it's the ones in the middle. So wholesalers, distributors, some 3PLs, we see the costs are really high, especially compared to the bigger folks in that industry, because there's just a supply and demand mismatch. And anytime there's a supply and demand mismatch, the people further down the curve are not going to be able to procure the supply that they need, which is going to drive up costs and really constrict capacity, which we're seeing manifested in those very low inventory levels for small firms.
Yeah, so I want to, this specifically, inventory fascinates me at this point. I alluded to it a little bit with the ISM, but I get the sense in the data that, and I've heard this a little bit when I read through some of the media stuff, but I'd like to hear your take on this. But there is a sense that we have somewhat of a conservative inventory management strategy where companies maybe, they don't want to commit to demand being in place for the long term. So the second half of the year, a lot of retailers, I've heard this from the NRF, a lot of retailers are expecting, yes, we're going to order, but we're going to wait basically till the last minute. So that IOTI chart that I showed you, I don't really expect peak season to happen anytime soon for the ordering process. I expect that actually to happen much later this year because a lot of these businesses appear to be increasingly concerned about second half inflation and some of the materials. Now, this is, of course, nuanced in the manufacturing sector, which I think you call out in your report as well, that there's a little bit of pull forward activity, and because that's the upstream, that's the manufacturers, that's the people that are building for the consumers who show up later in the year. So what's your take here? Are we seeing businesses kind of hold back, even though the American consumer continues to almost show up and continue to buy stuff?
Well, the April consumer spending was up like 1.5%. Although when you take gas stations out, it was up like 0.3%. So there's part of it. And by the way, I don't think that gas station was just Takis and Fantas. I think that was gas that was driving that up. And so that's part of it. The other thing I would say is that we're really seeing, and you mentioned this, two diverging strategies. So on the manufacturing side, it's a pull forward. And a lot of that is nervousness about component availability. If you look at really what the Strait of Hormuz is hitting even harder than, our own gas pumps here in the United States, it's like Southeast Asia. They're having rolling blackouts. They're like, hey, don't run the AC, all kinds of stuff. And so Southeast Asia is where a lot of critical components come from. And it's so interesting to me because what these divergent strategies really are, where retailers, yes, are absolutely holding off, and manufacturers are kind of getting ahead of it. It is exactly a reaction to the problems that each of those groups had during COVID. So think about what happened during COVID. So manufacturers, remember all those pictures of like all the pickup trucks like that couldn't be sold because they didn't have critical chips or semiconductors or whatever. And then at the same time, remember in 2022 when inflation went way up and all these companies, retailers especially, had way too much inventory. They're taking $1 billion write-downs. I mean, Target took a $2 billion write-down because of all this inventory they had. And so they both were burned in different ways between 21 and 22. Manufacturers had a paucity, a lack of critical components, and so they couldn't make everything they wanted to make. Retailers, the downstream folks, had too much stuff that they couldn't sell because they over leveraged themselves during the crazy buildup period of 2021, and then were left holding the bill, which is one of the things that cratered the freight market so much in late 22 and 23, is that they just weren't ordering anything because they already had too much stuff. And so these reactions that we're seeing now are 100% related. I mean, it's truly a reaction to what happened in 21 and 22, where manufacturers like, okay, we don't want to run out of stuff again, pull it forward early before we have shortages. And retailers are, we don't want to get stuck holding the bag again with too much stuff. Wait a minute, and we'll wait until we see what consumer demand is actually going to be, because the retailers right now, I think, are taking the position that they would rather have not enough and maybe have to pull for. Because the thing is, like, if we have a strong holiday season and we do have to rush everything over and it costs a little bit more, cool. We'll absorb that extra cost because it means that we're going to make it up on the backside really soon. We're not going to have another year like last year where everything for Christmas is here in July and then we just sit on it for 5 months, because we have no idea what the consumer is going to do in November and December, especially if, and you were talking about fertilizer a second ago, especially if gas and food keep getting more expensive. It's not going to be a big year for Santa. And so we really see these totally different. I mean, I don't even know if it's K-shaped. It's almost more like a T-shape because they're going in totally opposite directions. Is T-shaped economy a thing? I don't know. But they're going in totally opposite directions, upstream and downstream, based on what happened to them the last time they got burned.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of depressing me a little bit. No Santa this year, but we're having Prime Day or week or days here in a few weeks. That's an interesting move. We're earlier than we've ever seen it. Do you think there's some sort of testing the water or trying to get in front of inflation from Amazon here? Because that's it's typically a huge deal for them. Mm-hmm.
I think so. I think the first Prime Day is always kind of a good canary in the coal mine for if anything is going to change. So I think it makes sense. I also think for them, they do think probably that getting out a little bit ahead of it might not be the worst idea in the world. I mean, we really could see costs increase over the next few months, because the other thing that's still out there is tariffs. Yeah. Those still exist. I know it's kind of last year, but the rock and a hard place of tariffs and huge increases in transportation costs. Everyone's trying to thread that needle between big orders and small orders, because that's where it would push you. And I think for Amazon, partly they are one of the biggest retailers in the world, so they can leverage some of their scale and they can maybe try to get out ahead of it, because one bet they may be making, or a hedge maybe, is that there might be more discretionary income now than there is in 6 months. The traditional holiday season could be slower. Right now, it seems like consumers are spending. You talked about, we just got tax returns not that long ago, though we're mostly running through it. We do have, still some oil reserves. I mean, in some ways, you can almost think of, for the last 100 days since the war started, we've sort of been coasting off of our savings a little bit, both in terms of our tax returns and the oil reserves that we've had. As you mentioned, we're working through those savings. And so Amazon might be thinking, well, let's have a Prime Day now when there's still a little bit left in the bank, instead of 6 months from now when disposable income might be a little lower.
Yeah, I mean, I want to pull up the PPI chart and the CPI chart here just to, this is a year chart. These are hard to look at in a year, I find, but I wanted to focus on the current, because the PPI there, which is all commodities, it's not the headline figure that a lot of people look at, which was 6% in April. This is showing about 10, because it doesn't have this other things in it. But it's the CPI, of course, it's always a kind of a lag, and it doesn't necessarily always imply that a one-to-one relationship will happen. This happens, and I was talking about it for transportation earlier. Fuel prices don't always mean rate increases in the spot market, mind you, or for prices in general, but they do sometimes, obviously there's upward pressure in the market. And this looks like we're building some upward pressure on inflation in the upstream side of the equation. And, I think some of the businesses, especially some of the ones that I've talked to, are like, we're going to hold because we don't think this is permanent. I mean, we've been signaled how many times that the Iranian thing is going to end. The financial,
a couple times since we started talking. I think.
Yeah, I mean the financial markets. I talked to one of our friends, who runs a hedge fund, and I was like, man, how long are we going to continue to bite on Twitter or Truth Social posts about the conflict ending, and the market jumps up and down? He had a running joke. They all have a running joke about, 2% moves in the market based on tweets, and this, I don't know. I don't think a lot of people have a good sense of how long this is going to go on, but obviously the longer it goes on, at some point that PPI seems like it might break through. Do you have a thought here?
I think so. I think it makes sense that'll continue to push. One of the things that was most interesting to me about the report this month was the split between the delta between inventory levels and inventory costs. I mentioned that on average, we see inventory costs about 13 points higher than inventory levels. Well, this month, inventory levels were 29 points lower. So costs were 29 points higher. And so we had costs in the 80s and inventory levels in the 50s. That's unusual. And basically what that means, that delta being bigger than it's ever been. By the way, our previous high had been November of 2021. The costs were 28 points higher than levels. And that was November 2021, which is like the all-time craziest month that's ever happened, basically. That's when Target was, and Home Depot were like renting fuel tankers to take stuff across the ocean. I mean, that was like, things were crazy in November 21. And now we have this same movement here, and even a little bit more in May of 26. And what that tells me is that we've never seen inventory get more expensive at a faster relative rate. So sort of, if you almost think about it as a per unit level, in some ways, inventories are getting, the cost of inventory on a per piece, per carton, per pallet level is getting more expensive now in the aggregate. Now I'm sure there's exceptions in different industries, but in the aggregate, it's getting more expensive faster now than we've ever seen it before. And when you think about, okay, is that going to break through? When we looked at our upstream and downstream split for future predictions, and I know we'll talk more about future predictions in a minute, but upstream, they said the inventories are going to be at like 50 over the next year. I mean, partly this is a pull forward. This is a pull forward upstream at the manufacturing level now because of potential shortages. But a year from now, we're not seeing huge expectations of inventories being pulled forward. But what we are seeing big expectations of is the cost of that inventory. So upstream firms said, all right, inventory levels are going to go up at a level of 50, which is basically no movement. Inventory costs are going to be 84.7. So 34 points basically between our upstream levels and costs. Downstream, by the way, is a 68 for levels and a 73 for costs. So they have a 5-point difference. Upstream has a 35-point difference. And so what it tells me, I think, a couple interesting things. One is, yes, the PPI, the cost that producers are paying, I think will keep going up over the next year. But the fact that upstream inventory costs are 11 points higher than what we saw downstream does tell me there is some buffer there between PPI and CPI where we're not seeing maybe all of the costs get passed down. And, we saw this last year with tariffs where everyone, okay, it's 20% tariff. Everybody absorbed 2% maybe, so that by the time it gets to the consumer, we only have to increase prices by 8% or whatever it was. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of that here. I also think that our upstream folks are maybe more directly dependent on places that are being hit harder by Hormuz. And so they're having to deal with the fallout a little, and tariffs probably too. Mm-hmm. They're dealing with the fallout a little more directly. And so, yeah, I think that PPI, it is a delay getting down to CPI, but beyond that, I also think there's a buffer where the folks in the middle know that consumers are exhausted. I mean, right. Consumers have been dealing with crazy inflation for the last few years. I think they know they can't pass all of that all the way down. I mean, look at like Walmart coming out and saying, hey, there's certain things we are not raising prices on no matter what, because they know if they do, then consumers are just going to walk away.
Right. It's interesting because, the consumer confidence has been in the dump for a while, and it went to a new low here in the last month, but they're still spending money, and, they're still spending, at least not proportionate to their, I guess, the way they feel. But I guess also there's a little bit of, what's it called, where you go out and you spend, it's emotional therapy. Retail therapy, for not feeling great about it, but not getting into the whole K-shaped part of that. But it's, I think you make a good point, is that a lot of that upstream inflation will never see the light of day. And I think a lot of these businesses know that the consumer, especially the lower income, is already kind of hitting their limit. We saw credit levels are starting to climb up. Some delinquencies, credit card delinquencies are starting to creep higher as well. So there's some pressure building in that space. Doesn't mean that we're recession bound by any means, but it does look like there's some things that these companies and businesses are holding back on. They're signaling some things for later in the year that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see like the faucet turn on. But on that note, are there reasons that we might see the second half of the year explode and go the other direction?
Well, so one thing I would say that's tangentially related to that is we're able to bring things over faster in some ways. I mean, COVID was almost like supply chains went to like boot camp. Like it sucked. It was hard, but we're much stronger now and more resilient. And so partly one of the things that and I think it speaks to the resilience of supply chains and the ingenuity of supply managers is that one of the reasons we can delay everything is because we know we now have practice getting stuff here in a real rush and off of the normal timeline. And so I think that's part of it. Like that is one reason to be optimistic, is that when if things turn around at some point, and who knows, I mean, the Hormuz thing, it's tough to know. And the tariffs do seem to change as well. I mean, you talked about the new 10% stuff that came out last week. But if things cool down a little bit, one of the reasons to be optimistic is that supply chains can like shift quickly. Like we can really change fast and move things over. So that is one reason I think to sort of look on the bright side with some optimism. The other thing I would say, like if you're a carrier too, is because there's a great call out by you. This is not just oil prices that are driving up transportation costs. Part of this is we have right-sized fleets, and demand has been there, and so it's oil is not the thing that pushed us into this freight boom. I mean, it's one thing, but also we had movements in supply and demand where we were getting back into a market with equilibrium, and so I don't think that even if we have a fall off, the impact to freight markets will not be what it was probably in 2022. Partly because inventories are so much leaner now, we can't just sit on our laurels like we did in 22 at the retail level. And secondly, I think we're more prepared for a dip because of the way capacity is structured now relative to 2022. So if I'm thinking about it from the carrier perspective, that would be a comfort for me. For the retail perspective, I mean, look, it's American consumers, we're going to have back to school, we're going to have Christmas, we're going to have all that stuff. And so it just depends really on if we can get a handle on the cost of gas and the cost of groceries, because those are the two things that we can't stop buying. If we can get a handle on cost of gas and cost of groceries, I do think the consumer will show up again. At this point, though, with this much uncertainty, that is a non-significant if, or a not insignificant if, rather.
Right. I mean, it does seem to take a lot to really beat down the American consumer. I mean, we've said it for years now. Don't ever bet against the American consumer. We'll spend our way through anything. But the interesting thing here, I'd like to hear obviously you have the forward-looking component of each of your LMI components. Was there anything that stood out this month based on what you read?
for the forward-looking stuff.
Yeah. What are they expecting? Like, was there anything surprising? I mean, you did call out the fact that inventory levels are not expected to grow meaningfully. I think that's a big deal, considering that that we do have another round of, and maybe this is obviously before the last tariff was announced, and I want to hear your take on that one, whether or not you think that'll go through or not. But is there anything else in the forward-looking component that was shocking? I mean, they've been predicting prices going up for transportation for several months.
Yes.
Not to this level, but they were largely right there.
They were, and that's that's the when I was talking about the how resourceful supply managers are. One of the reasons I think that is because of how good they are at future predictions. I mean, all we're doing really is crowdsourcing the wisdom of people who know what they're talking about, and they usually end up with pretty accurate forecasts. I would say that so overall the logistics index over the next 12 months is predicted to be at 69.4, which is almost exactly where we are now. 69.5 is off by 0.1, and that is above the all-time average of 61. A lot of that driven by costs. So overall inventories, we talked about upstream being at 50. Overall inventories over the next 12 months are predicted to be at 57, which is sort of like a JIT lean inventory approach. And one of the reasons for that is because of the high costs. Inventory costs over the next 12 months predicted to be at 81, warehousing costs at 81.2. And so, it doesn't seem like it's going to get any cheaper for inventories. And basically the future predictions, it seems like folks are using, and this is particularly upstream, is things are going to be more expensive. Wait and see. Let's go as lean as we can. But one of the kind of weird effects of that is, let's talk upstream for a minute, is that in order to, it's not like we're going to just bring everything over and then stop buying things. We're pulling this sort of cushion forward now, and then let's try to really rotate quickly. And if you look at transportation capacity, upstream versus downstream, upstream over the next 12 months is predicting transportation capacity will be 34.1. Downstream's 54.1. So it's like a 20 point difference there. And what that tells me is that manufacturers are expecting, inventories to be relatively low because they're going to be so expensive, because it's, levels are 50, costs are 84. It's a 34-point spread, which would be the biggest spread we've ever had between the for the relative price increase of inventory. But in order to keep those low inventories, we'll have to turn things over really quickly. And that's why we see a 34 out of transportation capacity upstream. I think overall the number's 40 for, if you put everybody together. And transportation prices in that case stayed at 92. And so that to me says that it's not like we're giving up. Like if we were truly thinking like we're shutting the factories down, all that stuff, we wouldn't see the projected growth for transportation over the next year. Right. Basically, it's a shift in strategies where our upstream folks are, let's bring everything over so we don't run out, because we got so burned in 21 and 22 by running out of stuff. Let's bring it over, this sort of last little push we're having now. And then once we built up a cushion for ourselves, let's go to a very sort of lean inventory model where we've right-sized our operations, but hopefully we're not shutting everything down. One thing I thought was interesting with the ISM numbers from a forward-looking perspective is that the orders, right? So orders were up for manufacturing, which you talked about. Their overall manufacturing PMI was 54, but if you go down to the components of that report, the employment index was 48. Right. So basically that said, like, we're bringing in more stuff but less people, which is funny, right? And what I think that's telling us is, we're bringing this stuff over now, but we're not ramping up production necessarily. We're bringing it over now, so basically, so we can try to maintain over the next year. And so I think that's the order of the day for manufacturers. Try to maintain, keep everything sort of level. We don't want to run out. And retailers are, let's wait and see what the consumer tells us they want to do.
Do we have, like, we've kind of, Craig's done some deep dive research on the data center outputs and how it's influencing the economic. turn on CNBC in the morning and it's AI, AI, AI. And that's obviously where a lot of the investment and all the capital is moving. And in that sense, it makes a ton of sense that we would see some sort of fallout internally on this data center build out that we're seeing, especially the power grids and everything that goes along with that. Are you seeing anything in your side that kind of supports what we're seeing on this end? Because for us, we look at flatbed data a lot, which is a lot of that front end construction activity. It will eventually bleed into some of the more consistent van and refrigerated freight downstream. But is there anything there that do you think that's a component of what we're seeing in this ISM pull forward type movement as well?
I think so. Yeah, I do. And it's actually in many ways been a savior for like flatbed, right? Because construction other than data centers has not been that robust.
Right.
And so it's been great for soaking up those volumes. Absolutely. Now there it is the increased cost that you mentioned of like electricity. Like I saw some in the Wall Street Journal this morning about the cost of electricity in Phoenix maybe is going to go up by 14% for consumers. And I don't know if you've ever been to Phoenix in the summer, but you really need to have the air conditioner on. And so that's tough, right? And for that to be coming at the same time that gas is up 27%, that's hard, right? But on the freight side, so far it's been a boom. Now, you do wonder what the curve of this thing is. Like, are we at peak data center construction? Have we gone past the peak? Is it going to go up more? I mean, it does feel like because of the economic incentives, there's just been kind of this mad rush to build as many data centers as you can. And you do wonder if we're going to, it's not that dissimilar from the rush we saw to build more warehouses 5 years ago. Remember, e-commerce went up from 10% of all retail sales to like 17% in 3 months in 2020.
Right.
And so we're like, oh gosh, we gotta have more distribution centers fulfillment centers rather in urban areas. And now you drive up and down I-25 and north of Denver, there's a bunch of nice looking buildings that could be fulfillment centers that we didn't end up needing. And so you do wonder what the math is on data centers, because right now the approach is clearly like, well, we'll just grow forever. We're never going to die, and you do wonder if we will hit a point where we're sort of good on how much we need to build, and then where the market will shift after that.
And also, isn't there a natural capacity constraint there that we can only build so much? We hit that during the COVID cycle with a lot of the transportation networks, is that you could only ship so much. And then there was just a threshold. Like I think our rejection index topped out at 25%, and shippers basically that was it. Like they did not ship more because they could not manage it. They didn't have the throughput capabilities. And of course, your Ford F-150s that didn't have their chips, what's the point of building more of them until you finish the ones that are slightly unfinished first? But this feels a little nuanced in the fact that there's so much money going into it. Like I think I read something by Torsten Slok that was basically like there was so much, it was almost FOMO for the investors. Like we're going to build right through inflation and all of the lack of ability to do so that is kind of supercharging that sector.
Yeah, in 2007, we were spending a lot of money on house construction too.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that.
Right, yeah.
It's not like the money always means, good decisions are happening.
Oh, no. It typically does. It means the opposite eventually. Like, I think there's a lot of sentiment around the bubble. I think Jamie Dimon even said it online the other day that, this does look a lot like something that's a little... And do we ever do anything that isn't a little bit overheated or too cold? Like we don't really moderate anything anymore, do we?
You know how boring it would be if every month I came on here is like, hey, it's a 61 again. Things are fine. This wouldn't be that exciting. You wouldn't have all these fun little sponsors on the bottom of the screen. Yeah, it wouldn't be that fun of a show.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a wild ride. I think it's the right time for us to have an hour-long Freightonomics because there was so much to unpack here. And I think the rest of the year, there's still like we thought we were done somewhat with uncertainty in 2025, like with the tariffs and everything. And it just keeps coming at us. Like we don't seem to be able to get through to a layer of, what's going to happen next. Are you feeling any clearer moving forward, or you think this is just going to be persistent?
Man, the U.S. economy is the greatest show. Yeah. It's like Lost. It's like, oh, another twist. It's amazing.
Oh, I told my wife I don't need to watch reality TV. I work.
Exactly. No, the one thing that I'm interested in seeing is what are the limits of these new tariffs. And I know, oh, hey, you kept the same music. That's nice, even with the dress code. What is the limit of the new tariffs? That will be interesting to see. And I guess something we'll talk about for the July show, maybe.
Yeah, I look forward. I mean, that'll be right after 4th of July, I guess. So we'll see. Thanks again, man. And thanks for tuning in.